Transportation Master Plan provides the guiding framework to ensure our transportation network works for everyone. The plan considers a wide range of transportation network improvements across all modes of travel. The TMP has been designed to evaluate the entirety of the transportation options we have across all modes in Norwalk and provides for the flexibility for the demands that we cannot foresee in the future. The roadway network within the city plays a significant role in the daily movement of people and goods throughout Norwalk. Transportation planning is shifting away from singular goal of moving vehicular traffic towards an approach that looks at all transportation modes and takes into consideration quality of life, economic development, and the environment. The transportation plan does not list projects that the city will work on in the coming decade, but rather solidifies a transportation planning process that involves several key steps: identifying problems and issues, performing technical analyses, developing a multimodal plan, and monitoring and updating. What you will see here in the Transportation Master Plan is that it's a long-range blueprint for travel and mobility. The Transportation Master Plan provides mobility access in a way that is safe and convenient while preserving quality of life considerations by minimizing congestion, air pollution, and noise. Norwalk is a community that is rich in history, who is committed to economic development and poised for continued growth. A well-planned transportation system can make the difference between successful growth, good quality of life, versus failure to grow and deteriorating quality of life.
The master plan is really a guide, and it's used to shape policy and investment decisions for Norwalk's transportation network for the next 10 to 20 years. Meaning it is not simply a list of projects, but it is a way of thinking. It's a way of doing business and making sure that we're not looking at issues and projects in isolation. Fundamentally, a well-planned and connected and coordinated transportation network is vital to the economy of Norwalk and the health of Norwalk, and a well-developed and achievable plan will help contribute to the city's viability and vitality for years to come. I'm not going to read all of these, but as Jim said, it's really important to note that this plan builds on a lot of work. So we're not redoing work when it comes to a lot of active and recent studies and plans. There's so much work to build on. There are a lot of things that the city is accomplishing, has accomplished in recent years, and is doing as we speak. So we're very conscious of this body of work. This master plan really looks to connect the dots and make sure that we're not forgetting strong recommendations. We're amplifying some of the really exciting and key points that have come through some of this work, in 10 plus years. A lot of words on the screen, but this is really about how we're thinking about this master plan. And it began with us thinking that, as a statement, Norwalk is a rapidly growing and evolving city, right? The city is changing. There's a lot of vitality here. There's a lot of investment. There's a lot of development. Populations change, and the population is growing faster than most of the state in Fairfield County. And there's a lot of work, as we said, that has been done by many departments and stakeholders within the city. If we look to the right, there's a lot of objectives that we might think about in terms of transportation linkages. So how does transportation fit into all this and support this growth? It's talking about supporting the population growth and diversity. The nature of Norwalk changes over time. It's talking about commuter flows. People need to travel for work. About as many people live in Norwalk and leave as come into Norwalk for work. And of course, a lot of people work and live in Norwalk. So how are we helping those people get to and from their jobs or to school and to healthcare? It's talking about attracting new residents, new businesses. So this is really thinking about transportation's role in protecting the environment, in supporting the economic growth of the city. From that, we thought very carefully about a process for this master plan. And sort of beginning with a mission that, transportation's mission and the city's mission is to provide safe, comfortable, efficient transportation and mobility options for everybody, as Jim said. Where we really spent some time was thinking about 6 key goals, and I'll talk about them in a little more detail in a second. But from equity and resiliency through safety and transportation choice, environment and technology, these are the goals that we believe should drive the decision making and that should drive the linkages of potential solutions to the problems and the needs that we've heard so clearly from so many of you. And as we identify needs, this is something that, early in the project, we had an online website, an interactive tool. We got more than 800 pins dropped on a map, some from hyper-specific intersection improvements to broader thoughts about these are difficult connections to make, or I can't get to school easily, or I'm concerned about safety. Those needs really shape the plan as much as anything. We also looked at a lot of data to complement those and understand the context. But it's those needs that are driving the plan framework, and we're outlining as well a toolbox approach towards the strategies, many of which will be familiar to many of you, whether it's complete streets, whether it's improved bicycle amenities, whether it's improved transit service, different types of investments. But that toolbox approach is about addressing the needs, and this really reflects just how much we've heard from the public and from stakeholders. So this is how we conceived the plan. We wanted to be methodical about how we take in information, put it in the context in a decision-making framework, link it to these key goals, and then identify what can be done. So I'll spend a few seconds talking about the goals. We wanted to place a lot of emphasis here. This is conceived as an opportunity to really affect transformational change. We wanted to think big with this master plan and not sort of a cookie cutter approach to some known needs, some recommended projects, good luck implementing. This is really about making a big change and capitalizing on what is happening in Norwalk that has been so exciting. As I said, it's about connecting the dots between these ambitious goals and they're ambitious and they're aspirational goals. But it's about making sure that we're not thinking about anything in isolation, and any potential improvement or project that can address multiple goals is that much stronger of an approach, and also positions the city better for funding and for support, whether it's from the state or from the federal government or from grant opportunities. And lastly, again, it's a tool for decision making. So this is really about the ability to plan and to fund and to get things done in the future.
This was really a plan that was informed heavily by public feedback. We really wanted this plan to be, from the people who live in Norwalk, who work in Norwalk, who visit Norwalk. And then, use the data to support it. So what you see in this map is a bunch of dots that we sort of thematically organized by these 5 areas. They include the basic modes of travel: bike, pedestrian access, transit, freight access, which is really important, safety, traffic mitigation, and then something that I just sort of categorically call village districts, parking, wayfinding, and placemaking. It's kind of a catch-all for a lot of things related to how people experience various places in the city. And we know that Norwalk is not this monocentric city with a downtown and that's it. You've got Wall Street and Sono and East Norwalk and Rowayton, and there's a lot of little village areas. And that's why this concept of a 15-minute city is so important, because anywhere you are in the city, you should be able to access some of these great destinations so that you can, satisfy daily needs, what your needs are, whether it's getting a cup of coffee or getting groceries. And we think Norwalk is really close to becoming that 15-minute city. So when you access the plan and look at it, you'll get to this page where there's an interactive map. And really this is a numerical, listing of all of those dots you saw on the last map that you can select and look into what that specific need was. Now, this isn't an all-inclusive list. This is a list of a lot of the basic things we heard from both the community, but also through our data analysis. And what this is meant to do is for the city to, when they think about initiating a project, not think about projects that are very limited or very, very defined to one particular thing, but to look at groupings of things. So, for example, you might have a need where there's traffic congestion in an area. Well, we want to think about those 6 broad goals that Chris talked about, and think about traffic congestion from the perspective of equity, environment, resiliency, safety, technology, all of those things. But don't just stop at addressing congestion, because maybe there's a sidewalk need, maybe there's a safety deficiency, maybe there's a need to capture stormwater more effectively, and rather than dump it into the harbor, capture it in the ground. There's a lot of things we want to start thinking about when we define transportation projects, and that's going to involve coordination and cooperation amongst lots of different city departments. This isn't going to be just a transportation mobility thing. This is going to be everything. DPW, economic development, community planning. There's going to be a lot of players that are going to be responsible for thinking about how to initiate a project. And the great thing about that is if you do this the right way and you coordinate, your opportunities for getting federal and state grant money becomes much, much greater, because now you're thinking comprehensively, and that's what these competitive grant applications want you to do. Think broadly, think holistically, think about those really important goals. So this is just a list of some general types of themes that we heard across all these different modes. Somebody tonight asked me, what's the recurring theme you've heard over and over? And I said sidewalks. I think every neighborhood has an abundance of sidewalk needs. And I think that's a really important thing to continue to work towards and develop. But there's fear of traffic, high-speed traffic, cut-through traffic of trucks through neighborhoods, things like that. From a transit perspective, we've heard that tonight as well. There's the need to extend hours of service. Go to destinations that currently aren't served very well. Make things more competitive. So looking at the transit system and how that operates within the context of the broader transportation network is really, really a crucial thing for growing and evolving cities. Obviously, traffic and safety always comes up very high on lists of needs. We have a lot of them sprinkled throughout the city, but there's a lot of danger inherent in the system. There's a lot of complicated geometric intersections where you have poor sight lines, you have sometimes vehicles parking right up to the corners and you can't see. You have chaotic pickup drop-off locations at school. There's a lot going on, and so addressing those types of issues is important. And then, of course, that parking placemaking element. We hear the concerns about people parking in neighborhood streets as they're trying to maybe access the beach on a busy weekend. Or just finding parking where you want the parking to be, or having poor walk access connections from parking garages or parking lots to the actual destinations. How do you find a place if you come in from a different city or town in the area? Where you park, how do you get to the destinations you're looking for? Wayfinding is a big important piece to making sure everything works efficiently and effectively. So at your leisure, you can go through and you can take a look at some of these needs in your neighborhoods. But again, this isn't meant to be an all-inclusive list. This is a starting point. And there are opportunities to provide feedback in this master plan. We want to continue to build on these needs, and that will help the city inform them in the project development process. So it's really important that you stay involved. The toolbox approach. I don't know if any of you saw this plot up at the front, but this green set of boxes has a whole laundry list of strategies, right? These are things that the city can elect to do to address any number of challenges. Again, just a smattering of those strategies you see here. Again, not an all-inclusive list, but improving the sidewalks, making wayfinding not just easy for automobile drivers, but human scale, so people who are walking and biking can get around easier. Modernizing the bus system, making sure that where the bus services, where the fixed routes don't go, you have on-demand opportunities as well, so you can dial up a service and get to where you need to be. Thinking about the future of freight. I mean, freight is important. We all need deliveries, but can freight be done in different ways? Can there be smaller scale vehicles like cargo bikes or vans or battery-powered vehicles that can get the goods that you need to your homes without impacting the neighborhood safety, the noise, the air quality problems? So Chris mentioned a lot of really interesting technology related to adaptive signalization, the ability of traffic signals to react to demand as it comes to an intersection, better control safety and flow of traffic, and just intersection designs. Somebody told me they hated roundabouts, but I think I might have, if he's still here, convinced him that they're a good thing. But looking at where roundabouts are appropriate, because they're not appropriate everywhere. Roundabouts can be great, but so can traffic signals if they're done well, so we have to think about that. And then things like neighborhood parking programs, something called mobility as a service. That's your dial or your Ubers and Lyfts and applications that allow you to schedule bike shares and everything else. So thinking about the future of transportation in Norwalk is something that's going to be very, very important as you continue to grow. So how do we put this into action? I think Chris laid it out. We really want to have the city understand the needs and think about those needs from the perspective of those 6 goals, right? That's the lens that we should really be thinking about transportation from, and then making sure that coordination happens across those multiple departments and city partners. This will maximize the success of those grant funding opportunities, and then we want to make sure that we continue to track how things are working, how we're making progress, looking at performance measures. These are all things that are also important in terms of trying to capture additional grant money, making sure you can kind of measure your success. There are kind of 3 broad categories that we're considering, this master plan as a tool for. One is those funding opportunities, some of which the city's already applied for. Early actions, so these could be things that maybe are a little bit more near term, a little easier to initiate, that we can do sooner rather than later. And then things we have to think about more long term and in a more strategic and coordinated way. So we did a series of general concept plans. I know a number of you looked at the story map as well as the board that showed those. I'm just going to give you a quick little taste of what those are. The funding opportunity was Main Street. Thinking about that street as a more pedestrianized street. It's got a commercial district. It certainly has some tricky intersections. It has on-street parking. It has a lot. But it also has a safety issue. And so thinking about how to prioritize pedestrians on Main Street is an opportunity that the city has already looked to try to obtain some grant money for. An early action example could be the North Main Street at Martin Luther King Drive, where you currently can't take a left turn coming up North Main onto MLK. You have to either loop around, do a U-turn on West Avenue, or take Washington Street. And then thinking about a long-term strategy along Calf Pasture Beach and how do you manage seasonal beach traffic with the need to move people up and down Calf Pasture more safely and efficiently. So these are just concepts. These aren't meant to be actual design plans that the city moves forward. The city will need to initiate much more detailed planning work to see these through and get your input. But just as an example, this is one excerpt from the Main Street plan. You can kind of see what we've tried to do here as a vision is better define the travelway, making sure that one lane in each direction is clear for drivers, but also provides space for parking. Opens up the intersections so that we don't have those sightline problems when somebody parks right at the corner. Make sure that we plant trees and provide amenity zones for benches, street furniture, street lamps and such. And maybe even bury some of those overhead utilities that clutter up the street. But all of this in the attempt to really make this safer, friendlier, more comfortable for pedestrians, and then improve the vitality of the commercial district in the same time. North Main, again, I told you that the left turn lane now, finding an opportunity to squeeze that left in so you can now improve the operations at that intersection. We think this is a viable plan. This could be an early action. This is something the city has our data for. We did some traffic analysis, showed that it's feasible, and now it's a matter of getting some funding and going out there and making the change. So this is an example of how you can get an early action out of this plan. And then for something like Calf Pasture Beach, this is a longer corridor, probably a much more significant investment. But the idea here is to potentially road diet Calf Pasture from 4 lanes to 3 and use that middle lane as a little bit of a flex lane. So this could be a lane that could help manage that heavy traffic. For example, you can use 2 lanes in one direction for part of the day and then reverse it in the latter part of the day to handle beach flow. It could be used for left-turning vehicles into some of the side streets. But the important feature here is really providing a really nice, robust, multi-use trail along the side that bikes and pedestrians can use. Lots of street trees, potentially, that can capture stormwater runoff and store that in the ground. So this is a potential opportunity that would require, again, a lot of feedback from the public, a lot of coordination amongst city departments. But this could be a potential grant application in the future that could get some money to at least start to seed this type of improvement if this is something the city wants to move forward with. So that in a nutshell is really how we use the plan. We also had 3 sidewalk plans. They're a little bit more technical, so we're not going to show those, but they are in the story map report online. You can look at those. Linden Street, Riverside, and George Avenue, the first 3 that now the city can formally move forward with trying to develop better sidewalks and improve the conditions of walking along those 3 streets. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris to conclude, but the point of this is that we didn't want this to be all about just defining projects. We wanted this to be flexible, give you a taste of what is possible, but also leave it wide open so that you can continue to develop projects like this in the future. So, thank you.
So we are wrapping up, and as often happens in plans, you sort of read through a plan and you see recommendations, and then you get to the funding and implementation section, and it's phrased as near term and long term, but it's often a little vague. One thing, and we hope what's come across in this presentation, is we've thought about the funding and implementation elements from the get-go, because how we think about planning, how we think about defining and potentially bundling future projects really relates directly to where the money comes from. How can you actually get this done? So, you know, in broad terms, the master plan recommendations, they are aligned with funding programs. As many of you will likely know, the federal infrastructure bill contains a multitude of new opportunities, whether it's through safe bicycling and pedestrian programs, through transit funding, through any number of possibilities for funding that really emphasize the goals that we have also emphasized in this plan. So there's alignment here. We've structured this plan to put Norwalk in the best position possible to pursue federal funds. And we think that that makes it possible to both create new projects, but also accelerate existing ideas or existing projects that may be on the books. Again, these goals of safety and equity and environment, resiliency and non-automobility, this is what will position the city for the funding opportunities. This is aligned with sort of the spirit and the principle of this plan. But that's the importance here. So that we've thought about this from the beginning. We've thought about how you approach project decision-making, how you approach project identification. That needs assessment that we spent so much time on and really fleshed out and heard so much from community members is exactly what drives that sort of opportunity. So that's the funding piece, which is immensely important because these things cost money and need to get done. From an implementation standpoint, just to wrap up, this is how we see this master plan really as a tool and as a framework more than anything. It's for carrying out the vision and goals of the city, and it's for aligning, you know, these opportunities with the funding and sort of municipal and state and federal support that exists, but to put the city in the best position possible to carry out this vision.